Paige Bueckers didn't name Caitlin Clark. She didn't need to. In a recent interview that quickly went viral, Bueckers outlined her off-season goals: building muscle, improving three-point shooting, and enhancing endurance. But it was her timing and her tone that caught fire. Just as Clark faced questions about a decline following her own physical transformation, Bueckers spoke confidently about strength and performance. For fans, the overlap was too sharp to ignore. While Bueckers emphasized personal development, many saw a quiet assertion. A new leader was stepping up, ready to redefine dominance in women's.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
This wasn't a flex. It was a statement of intent. What Bueckers outlined wasn't just a training plan, but a mindset shift. No talk of chasing records or spotlight. Just a clear focus on growth, resilience, and leading with purpose. The narrative may be spinning up a rivalry, but for Bueckers, the only competition is within. Paige Bueckers stepped in front of a mic and did what few athletes in women's basketball dare to do. Sent a message that felt loud, whether she meant to or not. Her words weren't explosive. Her tone wasn't aggressive. But somehow, the internet walked away with one headline in mind. Caitlin Clark's time at the top? Done. It's my time now. And just like that, the rivalry discourse lit up like wildfire. It started with what looked like a pretty normal interview. Paige talked about training, her goals for the upcoming season, her mindset. Nothing shocking until you put into context. The moment she started talking about gaining muscle and endurance, fans immediately drew a line between her and Caitlin Clark, who'd had a publicly rough stretch after a significant body transformation affected her performance. The timing was suspiciously aligned. Paige didn't name names. She didn't need to. People were already dissecting every syllable, framing it like a not-so-subtle shot across the court. The message felt crystal clear to many. Paige Bueckers isn't just coming for a good season. She's coming for the crown. But before we get too deep into the drama, here's the thing. Paige never said she's chasing individual accolades. In fact, she made a point to say that individual goals, not really her thing. For her, it's all about the team. Her accomplishments, she emphasized, are reflections of her teammates, coaches, and support system. She's here to build a winning culture, not chase personal clout. That should have shut down the drama. But it didn't. Because even though Paige talks about leadership, respect, and growth, the minute she said she wanted to get stronger and shoot better from a three-point line, the fan base heard something else entirely. Shots fired. Specifically at Caitlin. And to be fair, the context didn't help. Paige's interview came right as conversations were swirling around Caitlin Clark's post-body change slump. The timing couldn't have been more perfect or more chaotic. People were already questioning if Caitlin was losing steam. And now here comes Paige, cool, focused, and quietly throwing gas on speculation. She mentioned wanting to improve her scoring in the paint. She wants more muscle, more endurance, and she's working on sustaining her performance through the entire season. All fair goals. All pretty normal for a player of her caliber. But fans couldn't help but hear the subtext. I'm not going to crash mid-season. I'm not going to make the same mistake. And whether it was intentional or not, the message resonated. It didn't take long for side-by-side comparisons to start flooding timelines. Paige's impressive rookie season, Caitlin's struggling second one. Paige's soft-spoken focus on mental strength and sports psychology, Caitlin's highly publicized pressure and burnout. Suddenly, Paige wasn't just a rising star. She was the alternative narrative, one rooted in quiet discipline and calculated improvement. And people noticed. Even when Paige spoke about working with a sports psychologist, emphasizing process over results, it wasn't treated as just another piece of athlete wellness. Fans interpreted it as another contrast to Caitlin, whose mental state and media presence have been under the microscope for months. Paige wasn't trying to be shady, but the comparisons practically wrote themselves. And let's be clear, Paige's comments weren't even aggressive. She expressed gratitude for her team, her coaches, and the growth she's seen from simply focusing on getting better every day. That's it. No direct shots. No spicy metaphors. Just a player talking about building muscle and dialing in her 3 points, but sometimes subtlety is louder than a dunk. People weren't reacting to what Paige said. They were reacting to what wasn't said. The vibe, the timing, the quiet confidence. Her refusal to chase stats or hype. She was telling a different story than the one we've been hearing from women's basketball's most media-saturated player. And like clockwork, the media ran with it. Commentators started asking if Paige was positioning herself as the new face of women's basketball. Headlines dropped words like challenge and rivalry. Never mind that Paige herself hasn't fueled a fire. That didn't matter. The narrative was already bigger than her actual words. Social media took it further. Fans debated everything from body types to training styles to leadership tactics. Was Paige intentionally shading Caitlyn? Or were people just desperate to see two talented women pinned against each other? It didn't matter, because the conversation had already left the station. And through it all, Paige kept it steady. She doubled down on her process-oriented mindset. She talked about building habits, earning respect, and growing within the team dynamic. It wasn't about numbers on the board. It was about legacy, about being someone younger athletes could look up to, which, of course, only further inflamed the comparisons. It wasn't that Paige was being passive-aggressive. She wasn't even being strategic. But in a media culture where dominance is currency, humility can sound like the most deafening flex, especially when the person delivering it is widely seen as Caitlyn's biggest threat on the court. Paige's fans called it a masterclass in subtle takeover energy. Caitlyn's fans called it unnecessary shade. And a large chunk of the internet was just there for the chaos. But under the noise, there's a much more grounded truth. Paige is focused on work. She's hitting the gym, refining her shot, and building the kind of endurance that can carry her deep into the season. She's prioritizing her mental health, leaning on a support system, and choosing gratitude over ego. She's not here for the rivalry, but she's also not backing down. Whether she likes it or not, the moment she said, "It's my time now," the crowd heard more than confidence. They heard a torch being passed, or taken. Paige Bueckers didn't have to call anyone out. Her presence, her timing, and her performance have done most of the talking. And maybe that's the most unsettling part for the fans rooting for Caitlin Clark's continued reign. Because it doesn't look like Paige is just catching up. It looks like she's arriving exactly when the field is open, and she's ready to claim it, without needing the spotlight to do it. The rivalry narrative might be manufactured, but the tension is real. The public's obsession with choosing the face of women's basketball means there's only room at the top for one. And whether she asked for it or not, Paige Bueckers just walked into that space with a quiet declaration that she's ready. Not someday. Now. So, where does that leave Caitlyn? Time will tell. Maybe she bounces back stronger. Maybe this all blows over. But for now, Paige has the momentum and the mic. Let's hear from you. Was Paige just focused on growth, or did she know exactly what she was doing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like if you're here for the drama, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this ongoing saga. Because if there's one thing we know by now, it's that women's basketball isn't just having a moment, it's having a meltdown. See, and the thing is, this isn't even about a real feud. Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark aren't brawling behind the scenes, throwing shade in press conferences, or subtweeting each other at 2 a.m. on burner accounts. But that hasn't stopped the media machine from turning a simple off-season interview into the women's basketball equivalent of Godzilla vs. Kong. Because in sports, especially when women are dominating, people crave a rivalry. It's like the audience can't process two elite players coexisting at the top without insisting that one has to fall for the other to rise. And the second Paige said anything that could even remotely be tied to Caitlyn's struggles, boom, instant headline fuel. Let's be honest. Fans were ready for this moment. Paige has always had this calm, almost surgical way of handling her public persona. She's not flashy. She's not out here manufacturing drama or leaning into theatrics. But that kind of quiet confidence, that's power. That gets noticed. And when the reigning queen stumbles, even just a little, the court starts looking real open for someone like Paige to make her move. Her comments about gaining strength and improving her shot weren't groundbreaking. But to fans who've been following the Caitlyn narrative, they sounded loaded. And Paige saying she's not focused on individual goals, That hit different when you remember how Caitlyn's personal brand has been built around record-breaking stats and highlight reels. Again, not a diss. But when one player steps back from the spotlight while the other's been burning under it, it reads like a contrast that's impossible to ignore. And maybe that's why this all feels so charged. Caitlyn has carried the face of the league expectations for so long that any whiff of competition feels like a threat. Her sophomore slump, her body transformation, and the way it impacted her endurance, that was already a sore spot for fans. So when Paige casually drops comments about building endurance and sustaining performance through the season, yeah, that hit a nerve. But the irony here, Paige wasn't even trying to start a conversation about Caitlyn. She was talking about herself, her growth, her goals, her mindset. The fact that it spiraled into a narrative about someone else speaks volumes about where the media and fans are placing their attention. And it begs the question, why are people so ready to pit these two against each other? Is it because they're both elite athletes who came up around the same time? Because they play the same position? Or is it the simple fact that the women's game doesn't always get this level of spotlight? So when it does, the storyline has to be juiced for maximum engagement? Whatever the reason, the rivalry has been written, whether the players co-sign it or not. Still, it's worth stepping back and asking, what does Paige actually care about? From her own words, she's laser-focused on process, on daily improvement. She's training with intention, muscle building, shooting range, mental strength, the whole package. She talked about wanting to be a better leader, someone who earns respect by showing up every single day. That doesn't sound like someone obsessed with outshining a rival. That sounds like someone who's planning to outlast, and that's where things get interesting. Because if Paige is really building for longevity, not just highlight moments, then her approach might be the one that ages better. The player who peaks early and fast burns bright, but sometimes not for long. The one who trains the marathon, that's a whole different threat. Her use of a sports psychologist also hit differently. It's not something athletes always talk about openly, and when they do, it's usually after collapse. But Paige brought it up proactively, as part of her process, not her recovery. That's telling. It suggests she's not just training her body, but her mind, preparing for the kind of sustained pressure that's crushed other athletes before. And that's elite. But of course, nuance doesn't trend. So what did people focus on? The quote, "It's my time now." It's confident. It's bold. It's everything a headline writer dreams of. But the real twist is that she could have said it 2 years ago and it still would have made sense. Paige has always had the potential. She's just been waiting for the moment when everything aligned. Health, mindset, opportunity. Now, with Caitlyn showing cracks in the armor, the opening is there. The fact that Paige didn't have to say Caitlyn's name speaks volumes. Her comments stood on their own, but the fans connected the dots immediately. And from that point on, the interview wasn't about training. It was about a new era. So here we are. Paige Bueckers is stepping into the spotlight not with fireworks, but with consistency, with discipline, with intent. And the buzz around her is louder than it's ever been. Not because she's demanding attention, but because she's earning it. Meanwhile, Caitlyn is dealing with the other side of fame, the expectations, the scrutiny, the criticism that comes when your game doesn't evolve fast enough. And maybe that's the real reason the so-called rivalry has legs. Because Paige represents the calm after the storm, the quiet excellence that fans suddenly find refreshing. But let's not forget, this is still sports. And narratives shift fast. All it takes is one breakout game from Caitlyn, and the pendulum swings right back. But for now, the energy's different. The audience is watching Paige with fresh eyes. She's not the underdog anymore. She's the blueprint. And whether she wants it or not, she's now the center of the conversation. She didn't ask for a rivalry, but she might have inherited one. And how she handles the pressure from here on out, that could define the next era of women's basketball. And you can feel it. This shift, it's not loud. It's not messy. But it's there, pulsing under every headline, every post-game recap, every side-by-side stat graphic. The Paige Bueckers conversation has officially entered a new phase. Not if she'll dominate, but when and for how long. Because now, the whispers have turned into debates. Is she already better than Caitlyn? Is her game more complete? Is she the kind of player who plays for the game instead of the attention? And whether those questions are fair or not, they're being asked. Constantly. That's the thing. Paige didn't create this narrative. But the moment she sat down in that interview and spoke calmly about strength training, mental focus, and taking over the season, she cracked open the door, and the sports world barged through it. She talked about endurance, about not just coming out strong, but staying strong when the season gets long, when the body wears down, when the cameras stop flashing. She talked about building the kind of foundation that lasts when the hype fades. And for a lot of fans, that was exactly what they wanted to hear. Because let's be real, Caitlin Clark has been a media machine, from viral buzzer beaters to jaw-dropping stats. She's been a headline for women's college basketball for what feels like forever. But with all that attention comes a level of burnout, on the court, in the media, and among viewers. And now, with Caitlin's noticeable dip in performance after that dramatic body change, people are starting to wonder if she peaked too soon. So when Paige showed up with a calm, strategic game plan focused on longevity, people listened, people paid, especially when her rookie season was stacked with performance, not personality. She didn't chase viral moments. She didn't need to. She just played efficiently, consistently, with a level of basketball IQ that you can't teach. And that's the kind of player that coaches love, that teammates trust, that fans start building dynasties around. So no, Paige didn't walk into the spotlight and snatch the mic. She just kept showing up, every workout, every game, every interview, saying less and doing more. And ironically, that's what's made her the moment right. And it's not like she doesn't feel the pressure. She's aware of what comes with rising expectations. That's why she brought up working with a sports psychologist, not as a footnote, but as a key part of her training. That's maturity. That's self-awareness. And it stands in stark contrast to how most athletes, especially young ones, are encouraged to power through it all without stopping to check in with themselves mentally. Paige is saying no thanks. She's not trying to be a flash in the pan. She's here to last. Meanwhile, the Caitlin comparison looms larger than ever because Caitlin's dominance was undeniable until it wasn't. When her body started reacting to the changes in her training, her energy dipped, and her game slowed down, it was noticeable. And fair or not, fans started asking tough questions. Then Paige comes in, talking about carefully building strength and endurance with a long-term plan. It sounded less like an update and more like a strategy. Like she saw what happened to Caitlin and said, "Noted, I'll do it differently." And whether that's what she meant or not, that's how fans took it. You could almost hear the shift in tone online. Suddenly, it wasn't just Caitlin's the best. It was Caitlin was the best, but Paige is rising. That's not a fall from grace, but it is a rebalancing of power. And to be clear, this isn't about rooting for one over the other. This is about watching the natural cycle of sports play out in real time. The pressure that comes with being the face of a league. The way fans demand greatness every single season. And the brutal reality that even the most dominant players can't keep climbing forever. Especially when someone else is training quietly in the background, ready to rise. What makes all of this even more intense is how not dramatic Paige has been about any of it. She hasn't played into the headlines. She hasn't posted cryptic tweets or clapped back in interviews. She just keeps emphasizing team. She keeps thanking her coaches. She talked about competition, but not in a me versus them way. In a me versus my best self kind of way. Which, of course, makes it even easier for fans to insert her into the rivalry role. She's the anti-celebrity celebrity, the quiet killer, the one who doesn't need to say anything because her performance speaks louder than any quote ever, and yet she did speak. She did say, "It's my time now." And that one sentence, that lit the whole thing on fire. You don't say that unless you know you're ready. You don't say that unless you've looked at the field, looked at the competition, and thought, "Yeah, I can take this." And what's wild is that she didn't say it like a threat. She said it like a fact, like someone who's done the work, like someone who's not banking on hype, but results. And now, the results are catching up to the narrative. So what happens next? Well, Paige Bueckers now has a spotlight she didn't necessarily chase, but one she's absolutely prepared for. Every move she makes from here on out will be dissected. Every bad game will be overanalyzed. Every good game will be used as proof that she is the new face of women's basketball. Meanwhile, Caitlin has something to prove, too, and that might actually make her more dangerous. She's had to carry the weight of being a name in the sport, and now that someone's sharing that space, maybe even threatening to take it, there's a good chance we see a whole new side of her, too. But for now, the conversation is tilting, and Paige is the reason she didn't set out to dethrone anyone. She just focused on the work. She improved the fundamentals. She stayed healthy. She trained smart. And now, the fans are doing what fans do, placing her exactly where her performance says she belongs, at the top. The question is, can she stay there? Because let's not pretend the pressure ends here. If anything, it's just beginning. Being the rising star is easy when you're chasing. It's harder when you're the one being chased. And now that Paige has publicly declared this her moment, the expectations will only skyrocket. She'll be compared, critiqued, picked apart. But something about her approach says she's ready, that she's been ready, that she's not afraid of the spotlight, but she's not addicted to it either. She just wants to play the game, and play it better than she did yesterday. And maybe that's what makes her so dangerous. So now it's your turn. Are we witnessing a genuine power shift in women's basketball? Has Paige Bueckers quietly taken over while everyone was too busy watching someone else burn out? Or are we all just desperate for a new narrative, and Paige just happened to be the calm in the chaos? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you're here for the drama, for the glow-ups, and for the quiet takeovers that say more than 1,000 highlight reels ever could, go ahead and like this video. And don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't just a rivalry. This is a legacy in motion. And trust me, you're going to want front row seats.